Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I'm co-founder of Financing Solutions. Over the last 25 years, I've built 6 companies in the $5 million to $25 million range, and I can't tell you how important it is for businesses to have a line of credit so they can make an investment in their business or even for unexpected emergencies. Our line of credit program is easy to get in place, inexpensive when used, and costs nothing to set up, making it a great cash backup plan. If you'd like to learn more about our line of credit program, please visit us at fscreditline.com, or in other words, FS and some financing solutions, creditline.com, or give us a call at 862-207-4118. If you apply today, we will even give you a $250 credit on file. Just remember, the time to set up a line of credit is when you don't need it, so that when you do need it, it is there for. That's the purpose of a line of credit. Because we don't charge anything to set it up or to when it's not being used, it makes complete sense to get it in place. Today, I'm very excited to be speaking with Jan Cavelle. And Jan is an entrepreneur from the UK who has a few decades of running micro and small businesses behind her. She is very familiar with all the challenges that go with that, having started one from the kitchen table when her children were small and she was a single mother, to go on to build that into a multi-million-dollar turnover business. Jan has put her entrepreneurial experiences together with her passion for writing together a book aimed at helping entrepreneurs to grow their businesses during the big leap of $1 million to $10 million. The book is called Scale for Success and is now out in the UK, US, and Australia, and it's published by Bloomsbury. Jan, welcome to today's Entrepreneur NBA podcast.
Thank you so very, very much for inviting me on.
Well, I'm excited about today's podcast, and I don't always get excited because sometimes we cover aren't they're not to me, like, intellectually, maybe they're not so interesting. This is the reason. The topic we're covering today is the reason for my podcast, is to help organizations grow to over $10 million. And that's in US dollars, not in so today's topic is scaling up your business from $1 to $10 million. And so I think it's going to be love to hear what you have to say about it. When you are building your business, now it says turnover business. It says, is that a turnover like, baked goods or no?
No, it wasn't. No, it was a furniture business.
Oh,
So very different. It started as a sales operation because that was something I could literally do on the kitchen table at home with the children, was buy in and sell on goods. But as it grew and it became surprisingly or amazingly to me successful, because I knew very little about business, I had trouble with supply chain. So,
wow. That sounds
gradually,
familiar now, huh? Yeah.
well, I had to sort it out myself and start manufacturing. So
Wow. So what made you kind of go into the furniture business?
that was just, it had to be something. I came from a sales background, and I'd sold, as people do when they drift from sort of small businesses and odd jobs and things when they're 19, 20. So I'd sold most things in my time. And I was in that situation of having to be far more serious about putting food on the table for the kids.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so furniture came from the fact that I'd worked in it a very little bit with my ex-husband. And it was very airy-fairy and but poorly researched, I confess, because I thought we were living in the country, and we were living in a part of the country where there were craftsmen, and so ergo there must be lots of nice people who would make furniture, and it was really as vague as that. And I thought, I will put it together, and I will put a leaflet together, which I did, and I got on my phone and started selling.
Yeah. I think as entrepreneurs, if we knew what we were getting into before we got into it, right, we would say, "What are you,
Oh wow,
crazy?"
I
Right?
know.
Yeah,
I
you just,
know.
so that goes for the idea of, oh, research what you're going to do, and I do believe that, but I think the concept is this idea of pivoting, and that is you kind of go in your business thinking you're going to do one thing, you learn something, and then you kind of pivot, to something else. It's not like
Absolutely.
180-degree change, but it's like, maybe a 45-degree little pivot, another pivot after that.
Yeah.
I always tell, I think I'm going to be going on a podcast myself in a week from somebody else, and they're going to ask, what's the top 5 things you learned? I'm not asking you that. Well, maybe I will, but I know the thing that I learned, and that is I always tell people you need to give yourself at least 3-year runway, because in other words, you got to be able to say, I'm going to be able to support myself for 3 years some other way. Like in the United States, also you need to hopefully cover yourself for medical insurance,
Of course.
um, but you need to be able to have some way. The way I did it early on was I worked a full-time job and then did my second job at night, my entrepreneur job at night. But this idea of did you pivot when you were?
I mean, I pivoted from sales in time to manufacturing, but no,
Yeah,
initially it was straight. I'm going to sell, but it was sell anything and to anybody. It wasn't very tailored or
yeah,
some market centricized. It was very much well, do you want something? And okay, I'll go and look for it for you,
yeah,
almost a shopping service, and
yeah.
um,
And
because
how did it change? So you started off, everybody else was producing the furniture,
Mm.
and you were getting the clients, right? You were basically, that, which is a very smart way to do it. I did it too. Did the business change from you going to production, or did it change where you developed a catalog, or whatever it was?
A little bit of both. We changed in that we had to go into production. I could get the furniture made in my sort of vague theory that they were craftsmen, but I quickly found that I couldn't get the furniture finished, or not in a contemporary style in the middle of the countryside where they'd sort of not heard of interior designers. And so that side had to be set up very early on, which we did in a friend's barn, literally, with a couple of people I knew. So we got the finishing side up and running, and it was quite a few years down the line when I was getting most of the furniture made by a small local business. And the guy came to me on a Friday afternoon and he said, "I'm sorry, I've just had enough. I'm going to pack up shop." And ah, panic, panic. What do I do? And I said, "Well, come in. Well, let's have a chat." And I said, "Let's strike a deal about this, and I'll take over as of Monday morning." So, all of a sudden I
Wow.
had two little businesses.
Did he stay on board or no?
No, I mean, I never saw him again, literally.
And uh, did it work out well?
It did work out well. I mean, the guys stayed with me, but he had two people full time, and they stayed with me for about 10 years. So,
Wow.
yeah. And, taught me a lot about furniture, which I knew very little about because, I was just getting on the phone and saying, "Can you make such and such?" Rather than actually understanding a joint or anything exciting on a piece of furniture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what do you think you learned? How long did you have the business?
I had it about 20 years in the end, which was
And
too
then
long. Too
and then
long.
you sold it?
I did, yeah. I sold the brand, and we had to break up the rest of it because I'd just had enough. I'd had some really good offers on it, and I dillied and dallied and thought, shall I, shan't I? After 20 years, you get stuck. And so I took too long to make up my mind, and then I just got to the point where I was burnt out one day, and I thought, I want out now. And I got an offer from a brand from a competitor, and so I thought, let's see, just walk away. And at that point, it was a massive relief. Going back 10 years earlier, it would have broken my heart. Um, but yeah, I'd had enough. I think there's a shelf life to staying in a business myself. Um,
Yeah, yeah. Um, What do you think is the biggest mistake you ever made in business?
that I made, apart from staying in too long.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's to do with that actually, because I think, oh goodness, I mean, there's so many. Hold on a second. I think that's one. That's one of them.
Yeah.
Because I think I'd lost my way. I set up this thing to provide for my children, and that was a huge driving force, and
Yeah.
nothing was going to stop me. And of course, by the time 20 years later, they were long gone and not needing me remotely. I was sort of doing it for all because one ought to, and it's not enough, and it wasn't driving me anymore. And I should have taken the first offer I
Yeah.
got and got out. So that's pretty big. Don't be afraid to change. I think it's very easy to get stuck in a business and
Yeah, I
think,
had a I
ah,
had something similar where I had a company that it wasn't doing well, and I got this ridiculous offer, like to sell,
yeah,
right? And I kind of hesitated for a while, and the attitude I'd always had is um, there'll always be another.
yeah,
There'll always be another, right? That's always the way I kind of thought through things, and it's hard to believe because I'm an opportunistic person, so I kind of jump on things, but uh, I never got another offer like that. And I should have taken it. I should have taken it. But
yeah,
I think when you were talking about it, the mistake that I had a hunch was that you never want to get out of a business when you're sick of it, right? You want to get ahead of the game,
yeah.
right? And you want to start looking before you ever get to that point because you lose your leverage, right? When you kind of say you're sick of it.
That's such good advice, and it's exactly what I wish somebody had told me,
Yeah.
because I remember sitting there smug and, so pleased with myself, and I knew everything, I'll be here when I'm, in my dotage, and you'll have to prop me up, and I shall be happy, and things will be the same. And of course, they're not. The markets change, as I know, having read a little bit about your
Yeah.
backgrounds, markets change, you change, your family circumstances change. It's just not going to go on same old forever. It's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's what you're saying is so true. It's like, oh, you think, oh, I did 7 million this year. I'm going to do 9 million next year or
Yeah,
whatever. And then, I can't tell you how many times I had three instances where something blew up, right? I had a 9/11 instance,
yeah,
right? Where something blew up. Well, that's a literal translation, but when that those towers found fell, by the way, which was only 40 miles from my office, and I was on a hill and I saw the towers.
dear God.
I saw the smoke in the horizon from the
Wow.
towers. When
Mm.
that happened, I knew my business that I was in at the time was going to crumble too. And not that my business crumbling had anything to do with those people, the
No,
terribleness of what
no, I know,
happened,
but
you know. But
yeah,
I've had some bad situations happen, but um, in many regards I was prepared. Um, but so yours was not selling soon enough. Tell me some smart moves you think you made along the way.
I think I was smart about sales and marketing, actually, to my surprise, and I think it was partly sort of fluke as much as anything. I mean, the sales I did draw from experience, and I was very, very motivated to sell. And I think, dare I say, that the UK tends to lag a little behind the States on the selling front,
Yeah,
without denigrating my country in any way, shape, or form. But America is it businesses are very focused on sales in a way I think that the British are not.
yeah,
And because it had always made sense to me to sell whatever I was selling, it was always a means to an end. And to me, that's roughly what business was. If you sold, then hunky dory, you were home and dry. It was wonderful.
yeah,
So we were probably more focused on sales than the average business, which was a good thing in 90%. Sometimes I overlooked the fact that you actually have to produce the stuff too.
Yeah, salesperson's like, oh, that's a
Yeah,
secondary thing,
yeah,
right? I just gotta get the business, and then I'll worry about that later, right?
that's
Um,
right.
what do you think? When did you make the biggest? Not like why did you make the biggest jump in revenue? Like, did when you like, what was the biggest jump in revenue? You went like 1 million to 5 million. That's a big jump. So 1 million, 3 million, 1 million. Two, did was there something you did that you made that made a big jump?
Usually it was because I'd made a mistake and I had to make up the money.
Wow.
But it usually came because of taking on bigger premises.
Huh.
And getting the timing, I was interested in your intro of you saying, have the cash when you need it,
Mm.
and get the sort of pipeline right, and all that makes complete sense to me, because of course that's one of the things that we often get wrong when we make those first moves on scaling, is we don't plan that pipeline out correctly, and I certainly didn't. And I just see, oh, we're busy, so I must take on another factory. And, then I'd get these huge bills coming in, and I'd think, oh my God, panic. Sell, 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 sell. And
Yeah.
so the revenue would go up, with problems would go too. But,
Yeah. Yeah. So what was the period? What happened to really, the purpose of this podcast is to tell our audience how to grow from 1 million, ten
sure.
million. So what was the big leap that you had, or if you had a couple, what created that?
I think in both cases it was, the realization that I had to do something, and drastic to pay for new bills, and it was very much marketing led. We at that stage were producing tangible paper brochures, but glossy top market ones, where you probably wouldn't have to these days. In
Yeah.
time, that became a website and a brochure, but the market still demanded a brochure, and we spent enormous amounts on the marketing side on that, and because it was our marketing tool, and we also did quite a lot of affiliate marketing, with partners to build a brand name. Which I hated, actually, because we'd used my name, because originally we just started as a sole trader, so I got stuck with it, and I had to become the face of the company, which I loathed. But it was sales, so I did it. Um,
Yeah, but I like what you just said, and I think if anybody's listened to a lot of my podcasts, they know that the number one thing that I think is the most overlooked part of small business is lead generation. That if you have good lead generation and you are acquiring prospects inexpensively and you are making money once they become customers, if you have a good lead generation system, you have a good business.
I totally agree, and that's where my sales background came in so usefully, because I was completely accustomed to being plonked in a small office in the back end of nowhere with a large list and told to get on with it. And
Yeah.
as far as I was concerned, I started with the business with trade directories and just getting on the phone. And, that was how we built the sales up, to the multi-million point. And I'd have salespeople come in and say, this is ridiculous. We've got to travel all over the country and we've got to talk to our clients. And I said, no, you don't. You could, because that costs loads of money. You need a
Yeah.
huge sales force. You need cars. You need this. You need that. You get on the phone and you build up steady, measurable figures, and it's quarter the cost and far more effective. And if you do it well, you can do it. And they didn't like it, but it worked.
Yeah. The furniture business has been known to be behind the times for a long time, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember, like, to tell our listeners, and a lot of us know the name brand IKEA,
Yes.
right? And I had done a case study when I was in school about IKEA, and at the time that IKEA came out, the only way that people got furniture was by these craftsmen who would who would it would cost a fortune, and it would take forever. And the only people who had really good furniture was people who had money.
Yeah.
And IKEA came in and um, said, "I'm going to make furniture for the masses." And he was the first person. I don't know if it's a he, to be honest with you. I don't remember the owner of IKEA, but it's a Belgian company, I think, or something like that.
Sort of
Or
Swedish, but
Scandinavian,
yeah, yeah, not far, somewhere around there.
somewhere there, right? And he came in and said, "I'm going to make furniture that everybody can afford." And if you look at their furniture now, it's certainly that way. It's beautifully designed. It's not quality, but it's
No,
beautifully designed, right?
it's really clever. Yeah, I mean, again, his marketing was just superb. He
Yeah,
absolutely caught the wave of the need. As you say, there was this gap, and I think there was a lot of TV going on about interior design at the time, and it was just starting that you maybe didn't want your parents' hand-me-downs, and you wanted something young and hip and IKEA-like. And he absolutely got it right. Yeah,
yeah.
definitely.
So when you
Amazing.
you look at the nature of your business, I think it sounds like to me like what you identified was, okay, you have these craftsmen who are producing furniture, but they're terrible at marketing,
Yeah,
and you have people who want nice furniture, quality oriented, and they're not hooking up with these craftsmen, and
that's
and and that's you said, that's I'll fill that void and I'll get my cut.
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's how it worked. And in the early years when it was very successful, though, what I'd identified was that builders' show homes, particularly, was a big market for this new fashionable looking furniture. And nobody was really servicing that.
Mm.
And to me, it made perfect sense that the designers in the middle wanted lots of different things, and they wanted it easily and reliably because that meant there's little work for them and a nice fat check from the builder. And,
Yeah.
so everybody was happy. And that was a brilliant market for us till about 97, 98 recession. And that knocked that market flat.
Yeah.
That was a really good time up till that point. And then it
Did
got a lot
you
more tricky.
you survive the recession?
We did survive the recession, but we had to change totally, and it was never very easy after that because we had to go to the private market. I mean, still through interior designers, but selling to the private market. And it wasn't, it almost wasn't feasible to produce what they wanted for the money, actually, anymore.
Yeah, my so I had a mentor for 18 years, and he was the smartest man I ever knew. And one of the things that would say to me, and would I could see him now. He would put a piece of paper out for me, and then he'd draw this graph, and he would show me the proof that every 10 years we go through a recession. And so entrepreneurs don't think that way, right? All
Yeah,
they think about is that the market's going to go up, 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 right? And the thing that I've learned over 30 years, and Jan, I know you would feel the same way, is if you're going to stay in business long enough, you're going to go through one or two or some recessions, and you got to be prepared for it because, like now, I'm on my sixth company right now, and I remember 6 years ago, and I have a business partner with this one, who's fantastic. He's really experienced at business ownership too, and we both, like 3 years into our business, say, okay, what is a recession going to look like, and how is it going to affect us? So
mm,
we got ahead of the game when it came to this pandemic. You know,
wow.
yeah,
Yeah, there are not
and
many people who manage to do that.
no, it would, it took us, it took me six companies to kind of get it right. But I wouldn't say that, but we planned it out. Um, so that's one thing. I think, wouldn't you agree that knowing now what you know after 20 years is recessions really have an effect?
Yeah, I do. I was very, very lucky in that I had some contacts actually through writing because I started writing for a digital publication for stress relief, really, because I loved it. But and so down in London, and I was invited to some very swanky events with really seriously good people speaking, and so they were sort of saying, we're expecting this 97, 98 one, I guess. It was probably 95 coming up, and so I was getting advance warning of what was going on, which, to be honest, I would not have ever had any clue about or
Huh?
expected or anything else. And I started to think with their help, having just been there to think, how can we, cut our outgoings, for example, it's as simple as that. And,
Yeah.
went back I remember we slashed sort of a third of our outgoings in, sort of a month, I think.
Yeah.
And, I couldn't believe it. I thought, how can we have been overspending that carelessly? But, we
I know the feeling. You're like, what was I thinking?
I know. But
Well,
you do, you're intent on, oh, wow,
yeah.
we're going and we'll do this and we'll
Yes,
do that. And yeah,
plus you're a salesperson. Salespeople are very positive people.
yeah,
They always think it's half full,
absolutely.
and in fact they think it's three quarters full. But you know what so I mean, before we move on to something else, so what do you do during a recession? The old adage is cut quickly, cut early.
Cut early,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
Yeah,
cut quickly. But it's the idea is to try to read the tea leaves a little bit, be aware that something might change, and be prepared. Say, okay, when a recession comes, because it's going to, where am I going to cut?
yeah,
You know, you know,
definitely.
and unfortunately, you have to say is you got to cut. Like a lot of smaller businesses, payroll is a big part of
Of course.
your
Mm,
expenses, and you got to cut early. And on top of that, you have to make sure that you have usually technology and processes so that if you have to cut, you still can get things done. So, agreed.
very much so, yeah. And I think, I've heard some amazing tales, and others I'm sure you have during this pandemic. It's also worth looking at what skills your company's got. Yeah, I was in particular awe of, as an Australian company you might have come across, run by a man called Jeremy Fleming, and they had a stage company who built big, huge
Oh,
sort of event
jeez.
stages. Yeah,
Yeah.
and they got hit, knocked out flat by the pandemic, as you would do.
Yeah.
And in a weekend, they came up with the idea of, oh well, we'll go into furniture. And that's exactly what they did because they had the skill sets and they've actually built a
Wow.
bigger company.
Wow. But
But
he
and
he he probably
literally,
didn't think about. Did he think about that before, or just he
nope,
kind of?
absolutely. They sat down and he thought, I've got to keep as many people in work as
Yeah, I just
possible.
meant did he do it before the recession?
No, no,
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
literally when it hit. One weekend,
Excuse
and
me.
you think, I wish I had the ability to think on my feet like that. And
And I
very,
think that's what I'm proposing. I'm saying that in that stage business, that
mm,
he should have said what would happen if a recession hit,
yeah,
right? Now, I don't think he would. Nobody in their right mind would say, "Well, what would happen if a pandemic hit and people stopped
no,
going to the to theater and stuff like that?" I mean, I don't. He's never going to predict that stuff like that, you know. But he, could have said, the problem with the stage thing is if a recession hits, people aren't spending money on furniture,
no,
right? So you have to say, well, where am I going to do? And then, a lot of times what you're doing is you're buying time. So
yeah,
he could have said, "Is I want to keep my staff." It's a problem with his business is his people are really valuable, right? You can't just let them go because when the
no, quite.
recession's over with, so
Mm.
you just have to find a way to keep them busy until the recession's over with, right?
Yeah, no, that's often the case. Though, as I say,
Yeah.
in his particular one, he's made a bigger business of a new one, I think.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Sometimes it really helps you. So, so when I'm curious when you were everyone talks about financing, it's always, well,
yeah,
I want to start a business, but I don't have any money, right? And by the way, that didn't stop me, uh but in your case, did you require your clients to give them for pay for some of what they were buying up front, or no?
Later on, yes. I mean,
Mm.
there's no way when I started they'd have gone for it because, I had enough trouble persuading them. It was a very new thing and there was a lot of resistance to the market. We were making quite a lot of stuff in MDF to paint it for a very sort of contemporary look, and a lot of the old school furniture shops and what have you were going, oh, that's chipboard, we're not having this junk, and there were a lot of sales things to overcome. And to try and get them to part money up front was a no-no. And again, in the show home market, of course, the builders would have not given the interior designers money up front, so no money to be had. So no, I had to juggle in the first place, and it really was hand to mouth. Like you, I didn't have any financing to get that off the ground at all.
So
And when we took our first factory on, I took a second mortgage on the house.
oh, so so when you started out, you did not require money up front. Oh, well, so you know what you probably did is, well, it didn't matter. Your expenses were probably really, really low in the beginning,
But
right?
exactly, buying in
Right?
initially,
Yeah.
they were minimal. I mean, I was working at home,
You're working at home.
yeah,
Did you have enough money to cover paying your bills and your kids and stuff like that?
barely. I mean, we
Barely.
were, and I
So
was on income support.
so how long was the sales cycle typically in the beginning? In other words, is between. So I assume you found somebody who wanted something. You found the factory or the craftsman who made it. You hooked them two up. You waited for the guy to get paid, and then he paid you a fee.
Yeah, I no, I did the financing, so
You did,
I
huh?
did the financing of the gap, so I had to juggle that. I got the money in time to pay them in time on the 30-day principle, which was very very tight sometimes.
Yeah. Now, so you did the financing yourself, or did you start working with a bank or?
No, at that stage, no. I mean, a bank wouldn't have given me anything,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
no
yeah.
chance. So no, I literally did it myself and built it up in a very, very small way. Sort of adding 20 quid or whatever to the kitty each week, and
Wow.
until I eventually had enough. And there were several moments where I thought I wasn't going to make it, and I'd sit
Yeah.
there on a Friday afternoon thinking, "Oh, this is it. I've gone. Can't do it." But
What?
yeah, I
Why?
mean,
Why did you decide to finance it yourself versus hooking those two people up? Did you want them to see your margin?
I I don't know really.
Huh.
I'm just trying to think back. It just it never occurred to me. It made sense that is that me being a control freak? Maybe I'm not sure.
I don't know.
You
I
know,
mean, one thing is you always don't want to see your margins. You don't want someone to see your margins of what you're making because then they get pissed.
true. Yeah, no, that
Um,
certainly
yeah.
did happen a
Uh,
lot. Um, I don't think it was. I think neither side wanted the hassle. That was my job, was to take the hassle out of it.
wow. Good for you.
So
Yeah. So as the company continued to go along, were you always self-financed
no,
or
no,
no?
as it got bigger, as I say, I mean, I put a huge chunk in from a second mortgage on the cottage we had, because I had to, because that first factory
Yep.
was way more expensive than I ever imagined. And then later on, I used invoice financing
Yep.
sometimes when I was
Factoring.
on a
It's
growth spurt. I found it was expensive for a permanent cash line, but for growth, it's ideal because it just covers you. And the second, I think I used it two, three times, and certainly the later times I used it, I was more familiar with it, and I worked out exactly how long I'd need it for, and sort of therefore the interest on it, which was okay steep, but it was going to be absolutely worth it because the whole thing was much more controlled than it had been, should we say, the first time, right?
yeah. I think there's two lessons that I learned early on too, and the first one was so everybody should know that's listening is that a bank is never going to give you money unless you have assets or to pledge to the loan.
Yeah,
Okay. Now, in this case with Jan, it was her home. She had equity in her home, but it also could be inventory. It could be other stuff. But, and most entrepreneurs really don't have that. honestly. Okay. Um, but the thing that I learned is if you can get your cash flow going, you will find someone to finance you. And in my regards, and in Jan's situation too, we both did the similar thing. Uh, we both use factoring or invoice financing, right? And so that I'm not going to describe what it is here. You guys can all look it up on the internet. But factoring and invoice financing is a good way to finance a company as long as you're not dependent upon it for a long period of time,
Yes.
right? And what
So
happens
agree.
is if your margins are big enough, you eventually can get the factor out of the picture,
Yeah.
and then you can get a bank involved,
Yeah.
right? So it's like these steps you take, right? And I think the thing that we're talking about here is, Jan and I both, have similar backgrounds. Is you you learn this as you go along. You don't have all the answers. You learn it, right? All of a sudden you say, "Oh, how am I going to finance this?" Right? And then you start tackling that problem,
Yeah.
right?
And I think, I was interested in you saying in the beginning, as I say about the, getting that set up. And I think that's one of the secrets to sustainable growth, isn't it? That you need to know what you're going to do about that when the time comes,
Yeah.
and, have the money ready to get your key staff in place or whatever's the next step in that growth plan that's going on. You can't think, oh, I need my management team in place now. What am I going to do to pay them? It's chicken and egg on that one.
Yeah, I think so. I think both Jan and I have also, we're both, both type A personalities, salespeople by nature. And in general, nothing's going to stop us, right? Right. I mean, we're
Yeah,
gonna, if there's a wall there, we're gonna knock the wall down, or maybe we'd be smart enough now to learn how to go around it. Uh, but the net amount is there isn't a problem that won't come up in your business that you won't be able to find a solution for. You really will be able to find a solution for it. And if you start off with that attitude, to me, you'll be successful.
I think that's right. And I think you will find it providing you want to enough. And that goes back a little bit to what I was saying about me having lost my way towards the end, because however much I thought it was sensible to care, it wasn't really coming from the heart anymore. But if you're determined and if there's, as you say, there's nothing going to stop you, you are going to go around the wall, knock it down, climb over it, but you're going to go
Yeah.
through it one way or another.
So, I mean, you mentioned that one of the main criteria that helped your business get much bigger was when you started being more, I wouldn't say sophisticated, but better in the marketing side.
Yeah, I think that's, happens to all of us when we grow, going back to that early period of growth, the 1 to 10 that I was writing about, is that when you start off at first, you will sell absolutely anything to anybody. And that, that's great when you're starting. It keeps you in bread and butter. But, you have to change as you get bigger. As you know, I mean, I'm talking to somebody who knows far more than me, but you have to actually get your marketing done and nail what your differential is.
Yeah.
What your cost of acquisition is, what your gaps in the market are, and are they going to be big enough to sustain that growth? You can't just cherry pick an order off to keep you going from somewhere anywhere anymore. It has to be much more organized.
What now? Was there a point? I know the thing that I noticed is there's a point where you're only working in the business and you're doing lots of the work. And then as you get bigger and you get better at what you do as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, you start working on the business. Did you notice that yourself?
Yeah, I mean it's very true, isn't it? It was Michael Gerber coined that one, wasn't
Yeah.
it? I think originally,
Yeah.
and it was something I heard a lot about. I'd started at long last by that time to go and actually learn seriously about entrepreneurship, realizing how little I knew. And everybody was starting to talk about this thing about working on your business, and I was desperate to work on the business, and I was loving it. I was loving the learning, and the whole thing was great. But in actual fact, it really exposed to me, slowly over a period of time, how many mistakes I'd made in the setup of the business for sustainable growth,
Yeah.
and how complicated it would be to put them right. Um, and I was constantly getting pulled back into the business. This happens to so many people, doesn't it? You start working on it, and then there's 64 crisis, and you're back in working the night, and you never quite get out. And if you can't get out, you're never going to be able to grow that business properly and sustain it. So it's a huge thing, I think.
Do you find that you're a control freak or no?
Yeah,
You are. Yeah.
I am. I think I'd be better if I did it again, which I've no wish to do, actually. I'm loving what I do now, but I think looking back, I do so much differently. It's so easy in hindsight, isn't it?
Yeah.
I definitely, I struggled to find the right senior staff. I think, and going on about mistakes, I think I very much stuck with the people I'd had from early on because it seemed a very fair thing to do. And I think a lot of people make this mistake, that you keep on promoting those people who've been with you for their loyalty, and that's great, but they may not actually be any use at growing a business. And so they may not have the skills that release you to work on that business.
Now,
Um,
did you get involved in the entrepreneur organization? I mean, Michael Gerber was, there's certain authors and people that make a big impact, and they usually. I belong to the entrepreneur organization, which is throughout the world. But was there organizations that you belong to or no?
I got involved in something called the Supper Club, which sounds very laid back, but it was actually started by some entrepreneurs, and literally they realized they were meeting on a regular basis and it was being really useful. And so they expanded it and asked a few more people, and it became a big growth club well, still is in the UK for very high growth entrepreneurs. And it was very selective. It's quite small in comparison to VEO.
Yeah.
So I was very lucky to let me in. I was always rather puzzled they did, but it was a great honour, and I met some wonderful people, and my goodness, did I learn a lot.
And so,
Um,
is that the organization that think you learned the most from in regards to entrepreneurship?
Definitely, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
and it was. I mean, huge fan of peer learning. Anyway,
I am too.
uh,
Yeah.
are you? Yeah,
I'm a huge fan of it. I turn to peers or people before I turn to the internet.
yes,
Like it's just the way I'm built.
yeah,
I've gotten a little bit better with it. Where like
yeah.
if I'm looking for an answer, like my first thing is okay, who do I know who can help me with that? But I've gotten a little bit better about going on the internet first and searching that. I just find that if you want anything in depth and if you want the real answer, people know it who have experience in it. And if you go on the internet, it's just very simplistic and it's not in depth. You know, it's gotten better, and I use YouTube a lot now,
Mm.
and I find just because that's the way I learn is better through visualization than through reading. Um, but but I am doing better about going on the internet to read up about things. I mean, it sounds old fashioned, but you know,
No, I totally with you, and I think your point about learning from people who've actually done it. Too, books
oh
are
yeah,
okay, but if somebody hasn't experienced it or
yeah,
gone through it, they don't get it in the same way. It's
they just don't
textbook.
get it.
No,
No way. And then you read the articles from people in the United States, Inc. magazine or something like that, and I'm like, you haven't. the person who's writing it hasn't started their own business. They have no clue.
No.
And not only do they have no clue about, they don't give advice typically, but they don't have any clue about the questions to ask,
Yeah,
right?
I do.
And so, do you think your 20 years of building your business, like, you look back at it now and say it was like really, really hard?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah, it was. I mean, again, the early sort of 10 or 10, 15 years perhaps were hard in a different way. They were hard, amazing, chaotic, crazy, fun, loved every second of it hard, but my goodness, it was hard. Whereas the last 2 years were, getting out of bed and wading through
yeah, that
deepest,
sucks. I'm sorry it was
yeah,
that way.
that well,
Yeah.
but
I love what I do for a living now.
yeah.
And, I'm 56. I own, four companies, but, it sounds bigger than it really, two of them are big, but, the other two are nothing special. But,
It sounds
um,
extremely impressive.
no, it's not. It's just, listen, let me tell you why I'm successful. I'm 56 years old. I love getting out of bed and doing what I do. And I'm able to do things outside of work because of, the way I've built the businesses, right? That to me is a very successful person, right? I make good money. I can pick what I want to work on.
Yeah.
I have the hours to be flexible, and so to me, that's the definition of success. I've not built $100 million business. I've not ever gone public. To be honest with you, I would have liked to have done those stuff. But my business partner that I've been with for the last 10 years, that's not his thing. And, I like the adventure of where business takes you.
Oh, yeah.
I like that life is an adventure. And if you have enough money saved, you can kind of take more of a chance that way, than when you first start, where you're just trying to pay the bills, right?
Well, desperation's quite good to get you going too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you doing now? You doing the coaching thing now?
I do a little bit of coaching, but I do quite a bit of writing. I just love the writing, and it's the dual edge thing. I get to speak to a lot of entrepreneurs because I do a lot of entrepreneur profiles, and I find it so fascinating. It's going on with my learning. There's such exciting things going on now in business,
Yeah.
that weren't there 10 years ago. And, and I come off a call with, having spoken to somebody, I'm sure you're probably the same on the podcast, and,
Yeah.
you hear about these amazing new things that can be done. And it's all right, and
Yeah.
I buzz around on a high for days, and I
Yeah.
just love it and learn so much. And if I can pass that on to people,
What do you think that if, someone, purchased your book, which is, Scale, right? It's, the book is
scale for
called Scale
success.
for Success.
Mm.
Tell me, what do you think an entrepreneur would get out of it?
I think the principle, oddly enough, we were just talking about is what I wanted to do was write in a way that was a very peer learning sort of way. And I was really chuffed when a friend of mine who I'd known from back at that club, the Entrepreneurs Club, said, reading it was like going to a series of evenings, but really good ones.
Like a supper
And
club?
yeah,
Yeah.
and I thought, wow, my goodness, I actually got near to what I wanted to do, because I think, that's what makes entrepreneurs, as we say, get something out of it, is identifying with bits. There might be bits that they don't, same as any entrepreneur's conversation, but, they get that feeling that they're actually reading about people and stories that have been there and done it. It's not a book. If you want a guru, don't buy it.
Yeah. Sounds like a good read. I think I like it. Well, it's very good. I really would like to thank so very much, Jan Cavell from her own company, for coming on to today's podcast. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also subscribe on your favorite podcasting app. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your business, you can call us at 862-207-4118, or visit our website at fscreditline.com. Again, that's FS as in Financing Solutions, fscreditline.com. Jan, if anyone wants to get in touch with you, how would they go about doing that?
The quickest way is just to leap on my website, which is jancavelle.co.uk.
Yep.
And my contact details are on there, and I'd love to hear from any of your listeners who want to ask me a question.
Yep. And it's Jan, Jan, and her last name is Cavelle.
That's right.
And it's .com, correct?
.co.uk.
.co.uk. And thanks for coming on today.
My absolute pleasure. Loved it.
And for our listeners that are out there too, if you want to learn a little bit more about business, I tweet daily at S Halasnik, which is my name, SHALASNIK. And I share with you, things that are on my mind at that moment, or things that I've learned over 20 years, or things that I'm working on personally now. I think it's a really good resource for you guys. So, basically one of the key things I think Jan really pointed out today is that being an entrepreneur is self-taught. You have to keep learning. If you keep learning, you'll get better, and you're not going to learn this stuff at school. You just got to go do it. Everybody, have a fantastic day.